Coming just 1 year after Child's Play 2, this third entry in the series stars an 8-year-older Andy who finds himself in a whole new environment. In terms of a time jump, this was quite the move back then. In terms of this film, it allowed the folks behind the film to take a few liberties as to where Andy and Chucky would not find themselves. Keeping the lead as the same character was a risky move, as it would require a recast and create less recognizability for the film itself. However, going older allowed them to include more mature issues and to create a bit of a new world for the film. So how did this all go? Well, let's check that out together.
Give me the power, I beg of you! Don't fuck with the Chuck!
Let's start with the story here. It is now 8 years after part 2. The good guys toy makers are bringing them back, and their higher up is Chucky's first victim in a newly redesigned, ready for the 90s doll body.
Just like the good old days.
Soon after, we get to Andy, who finds his way to a military-style reform school after bouncing from foster home to foster home. As things are established, it is shown that a child much younger than the others was placed there by his father, and as innocent as he is, he may not be the best judge of character. Of course, this gives Chucky some ideas once he arrives there, and this kid steals him from Andy, who was meant to receive him. From there, the film gives us mayhem and kills. As is usual for the Child's Play series, plenty of blood and more jokes than fear. As is usual with this series, let's look at what the f happened to this horror movie. Why did this entry in a cult series put the series dormant for years? That is, until Bride of Chucky in 1998. This may be the least interesting of the series, and even Don Mancini seems to believe so. He was asked to write the third film before the second film had even come out. The box office wasn't proven yet, and Mancini has said since that he felt out of ideas at the time and without a break between the two films. His work here is not his best, but it has some interesting ideas. Some of these interesting ideas were never filmed, however, including having Charles Lee Ray's blood mix in with the plastic to make the dolls and have it split between multiple dolls to create multiple Chuckies. This is something that eventually happened in Cult of Chucky. Here, the film also had an odd way with time, something that also happened with Bride of Chucky. The time jump between Child's Play 2 and Child's Play 3 is 8 years, while the actual time between the two releases was just 9 months. Then, between Child's Play 3 and Bride of Chucky, it's 1 month, while the releases were 7 years apart. The timeline started getting iffy with Child's Play 3. With these odd time jumps and changes in the stories, it led to a needed recast for Andy, the lead character of the series so far. Things felt rushed and corners were cut, the fans could tell. Following this writing period, the film was put into production, shot, and went into post-production to be ready for release in 9 months. Babies literally take just about as long to be ready as this film, and they are not ready for the world yet. Production itself is not well structured. The fact that it was rushed to get a release date so fast after the second film was definitely an issue on the success front. Marketing also had to be rushed, happening at the same time as production and post-production, giving fans no time to forget the second film, but also no room to breathe and time to get excited about the third film. The marketing was rushed like the production, the release was rushed as well, and the fans didn't exactly rush to go see it. The film cost about $13 million to make, plus marketing costs and distribution costs, which are not usually counted in a film's budget, so the fact that it made $20.5 million at the box office puts the film in the failure or flop category. In terms of reviews, this film was crucified back in the day, and things have not exactly gotten better for it. Rotten Tomatoes currently reports a 23% from the critics and 34% from the viewers. Not the worst we've seen here, but a pretty bad one. Clearly, these films are not exactly beloved in the general critics community, but for Child's Play 3, even genre critics were not exactly in love with it. So in terms of box office position, it did decent at first, but it did not have legs. Of course, coming out in the end of the summer season during back to school may not have been the best choice of release weekend for Child's Play 3. Add that to the presence of Freddy Krueger looming over the release as a coming attraction. The film was in for a tough time at the box office no matter what. Following this, the film took a bit to make it to home video, but that time frame was basically normal back then. Its home video release was March 12, 1992, missing the holiday season and potentially some good sales based on the success of the previous films and on being something fans would have asked for as a gift for Christmas. Given how VHS releases worked in the early 90s, getting the film on the shelves for sales before Christmas would have been a bit of a miracle following a late August theatrical release. That being as it is, the film did okay on home video as a rental and in sales, but it didn't quite break records. This one is a cult film situation where its audience took a while to find the film on tape and give it the proper love it deserved. At this point, it's a well-known film with a few different releases on disc, usually through box sets with the rest of the series. It's not the most beloved, but folks watch it and love it. Some out of honest interest in the film because it's part of the Child's Play series. Others because they love a good bad movie. Another factor that may have played into the film selling a bit less than expected by the studio, or at least something folks blamed at the time, the potential influence of Chucky and the first two Child's Play films on crimes. The James Bulger case was brought up as a cause for pulling back on the film, as UK tabloids claimed it had influenced the kids who killed James Bulger, even though the two kids who killed him had never seen the film. There were rumors at the time that this led to the film being banned in the UK, which is not true. The crime did lead to more censorship of horror films, but not to the direct banning of Child's Play 3. In another case, the words "Chucky coming to play" were used to announce the beginning to torture on a girl by her classmates. The song "Hi, I'm Chucky, Wanna Play" by 150 Volts was also used as a means to torture her, making her listen to it at a full volume repeatedly. The victim originally survived long enough to tell her story before succumbing to her injuries. This horrific case was used as a cautionary tale about movies influencing violent crimes and that Chucky himself was a bad influence on kids. In reality, it has now been proven that none of this is true, that violent films do not create violent criminals, but folks looking for easy to point to culprits will always love to blame horror movies. This film is not all doom and gloom. There is some fun here, especially in the trivia about it. For example, John Ritter was supposed to appear in this film as a security guard at the Good Guys plant, but that did not happen. He became the police chief in Bride of Chucky, whose niece leaves him with her boyfriend as he's overly controlling and a giant bag of annoyances. The character may have been recycled, but clearly it was for the best here. Another idea that comes from this film and was used later is that multiple Chuckies were supposed to be mixed with blood in the plastic at the factory, leading to a bunch of little Chucky clones running around. As that was scrapped here, it was reused in Cult of Chucky in 2017, giving for an interesting development in the story of that movie. Another scene is what became the death scene for Nurse Carlos in Cult of Chucky. It was meant for Sullivan, the good guy company big boss here, who ended up with a different death, of course. Other potential castings that almost happened, but not quite, were for the part of Andy. Before they settled on Justin Whalen, a few young actors were considered, including Jonathan Brandis, who was all the rage with tween and teenage girls at the time, Will Wheaton, Skeet Ulrich, and oddly enough, Ethan Hawke, someone who even back then wouldn't have felt right at all. The man has since joined the horror community full on with The Black Phone and The Purge, but back then, he was not quite there yet. Playing De Silva is Perry Reeves, but originally the part almost went to Alyssa Milano, Juliette Lewis, and Meredith Salinger, all of which could have been a solid choice. Another part that saw lots of names attached to it at one point or another was that of Sergeant Botnick, who had names like Gary Busey and Stephen Lang, as well as Gary Sinise, Robert Patrick, Jeff Fahey, and a bunch more talked about as the actors who had potential for the part. In the end, the part went to Andre Robinson, who horror fans know from Hellraiser. The cast varied a lot during pre-production, and the final cast feels mostly right with a few head scratchers. So inevitably, viewers will always wonder who each of these people would have portrayed the characters that went to the cast here. The film boasts 7 Chucky kills. As is tradition, Chucky loses his right hand before the end of the film, cut off by Andy using a knife. Sergeant Botnick predicts his own death by throat cutting when he discusses why soldiers have short hair.
Presto!
And the main bit of blood and gore trivia that will make some wonder how much more violent this film could have been, it was considered to have the scene where Chucky replaces paintballs with actual bullets, led to a bloodbath instead of a near-miss situation. This would have seriously upped the kill count on this film and may have helped bring in the gore hounds to see it in theaters. Overall, this film's numbers at the box office and how it was received by critics and fans at the time didn't actually help the series, putting it in a sort of hibernation cycle until Bride of Chucky in 1998.
Well, it's a long story.
It sure is. In fact, if it was a movie, it would take 3 or 4 sequels just to do it justice.
Which was better received and gave the series a new direction in terms of style and story. As fans have discovered now, Chucky cannot be killed, at least not permanently. He's the forever returning killer, and fans love him for that.
Just like the good old days.
You gotta be fucking kidding me!